Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or wherever time it is, wherever you're watching this and on cyberspace. My name is Shurtleff. I am the Regional Field Director for the John Birch Society, covering New England states and some of the Mid-Atlantic states and a few of the Midwestern states. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm here with Landon, St. Peter. We are in beautiful Saco, Maine, in February 9th of 2012. And we've been up here. I've been up here. He's been down here because he lives up in Waterville, Maine, doing presentations on Agenda 21. But before we get into that, I'd just like to talk a little bit about Landon's mission. He is a full-time field rep on staff, and he covers the state of Maine exclusively. And we do have a number of full-time field reps in the last several years that are focusing on one particular state. And we did that because we want to influence opinion molders in a more concentrated area. And thankfully we're able to have the resources to do that. So Landon had been a volunteer member. He joined several years ago. And June of 2011 came on staff. So tell us a little bit about your background and what prompted you to become a John Birch Society member and then come on staff.
Well, I joined the organization in 2008 during the presidential campaign. I was recruited by a fellow up here in Maine because I was becoming I was educating myself piecemeal, bit by bit. When I ran into the John Birch Society, which I had heard only various little small things
and
about,
probably
didn't know
negative
about
in some respects,
more or less negative,
yeah,
in one sense or another. But when I started looking into their mission and what they were actually doing, I realized it was a perfect fit. And so I joined the society at that time, 2008, and I was a fairly active member through the years. A position opened up, like you said, a position opened up here in Maine for a full-time coordinator, and I applied for it. A couple other fellows applied for it too, and I lucked out. I ended up with it. I went on staff full-time in June this past year, and it's been a whirlwind ever since. It's been quite interesting. I've just about worn out one truck already, and just purchased another vehicle.
From driving off from 95
from driving 95 from Kittery to Madawaska.
Yeah. Now, what have you experienced? Now, Maine does not have a reputation of being what you'd call a Bible Belt state.
Maine has a reputation of being a pretty liberal state. I mean, we're kind of in that sense, we're kind of a bedroom community for Massachusetts and the liberal states down in southern New England. But I've noticed, I don't know if it's the political climate in the country or just the way things are, the way things are developing, there seem to be more and more people waking up to the danger that our republic is actually in. And along with that awakening comes a desire to do something about it.
And so you see that in Maine as well.
I'm seeing it a lot in Maine. These people see that we're in trouble, and they want to help. They want to do something, so that when they run into the John Birch Society and we show them that we have a plan, a plan of action that they can start implementing right now, and educational materials that they can pass out and introduce other people to it. People are jumping on board. When
somebody becomes a member of the John Birch Society and they live in Maine, what do you want them to do? What do you recommend they do? What should they do?
Well, first they should educate themselves. They should take every opportunity they can to educate themselves on the issues of the day.
And they do that by?
They do that by using the educational materials that the John Birch Society produces. As you know, we run a world-class publishing house and an investigative news desk out there in Appleton, Wisconsin, and we produce a variety of magazines, newspaper, books, newsprint, DVDs. All types of educational materials. I happen to have a few of them here with me.
Show them to the folks, because they're dying to know what that educational material is, I'm sure,
well,
right?
One of the programs that we've been working on is called Support Your Local Police. This little pamphlet here is a reprint from the news magazine we publish twice a month called The New American. It's on the dangers of a federalized police force, and a federalized police force, as you're well aware of, has been one of the tools that dictators and totalitarian governments have used throughout the ages.
It also exposes an entity called the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Exactly.
Which has become sort of a de facto intelligence arm of some police departments.
They're,
But they have an agenda, don't they, as the article points out?
They certainly do. They're anti-American in every sense.
And the word poverty doesn't belong there because they're an extremely wealthy organization.
This is an extremely well-funded organization that is, in my opinion, is absolutely dedicated to the downfall of this country. And they're as you said, they're acting as an investigative arm for the police force around the country, police forces, providing them with reports, different various and sundry reports. I'm sure a lot of our viewers will remember back, early in 2009, the state of Missouri came out with something called the Missouri Information Assurance, something called the Missouri Information Assurance Center or something.
I forgot what the
come out with a
was,
report that identified Ron Paul supporters, Chuck Barr supporters, returning veterans.
Was it Chuck Baldwin?
Chuck Baldwin, not
returning veterans.
Bob Barr, yeah. Chuck Baldwin.
Yeah.
Returning veterans, people that were against or opposed the IRS. Identified all these people as potential violent terrorists.
Basically, half the country.
Basically, half the country was identified as potential violent extremists, and they called them that right out. It raised such a firestorm that the state of Missouri publicly withdrew that report from consideration.
Yes.
And we've been working around the country, and lately here in Maine, introducing various police departments and county sheriff's offices to this issue, and getting a pretty good reception. One of the other programs that we've been involved with, and the reason for Hal's visit up here to Maine, is Agenda 21, a UN program that is aimed straight at your right to own your own property and do with it as you please. This little pamphlet right here is available from our website, www.jbs.org. And it breaks down in a real clear language and real easy to understand and real easy to pass on the dangers that these United Nations programs do pose to the country.
Now, back last year, you and some of the John Birch Society members, as well as some other groups, Maine Refounders, Maine Patriots, played a role in educating the governor as to the real effects or the real intentions of the Gateway 1 initiative.
Right,
so could you talk about that really briefly?
Gateway 1 was a attempt by non-government organizations and non-government agencies to form a regional transportation corridor along the I-1, along coastal Maine, basically from Biddeford to Belfast, along the I-1 corridor. It all sounded very nice. It was to improve the transportation flow, so they didn't have massive traffic jams in the summer. There was a lot of good sounding things in there about improving access to businesses and things like that. But what it really was an attempt to create a non-elected regional government with absolute and 100% control over land use issues along that corridor, and from there they would eventually spread out to other corridors.
So you're saying unelected,
and
unaccountable for the most part, right?
Absolutely unaccountable.
Answerable to whom?
Presumably answerable to the people that are funding them through one source or another.
Right.
We found out that a lot of their funding came from the big charitable trusts like the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Endowment. Some of their funding came through organizations such as the Tides Foundation, which is a subsidiary of George Soros's international organizations, and various other environmental, Sierra Club and some of the huge environmental groups were providing funding to these towns and to get them to go along with this Gateway 1 project. Well, when the governor realized, and our new governor was Paul LePage, by the way, up here in Maine, a staunch conservative and a constitutionalist, when he was introduced to this issue, he pulled the plug on their funding.
But he didn't know about it until then, did he? Until it was brought to him.
He had no idea
what
was going on.
So that's the important of our mission, is to inform ourselves and inform others, but it's an activist thing. It's not just sort of sitting back and reading a magazine.
Absolutely. We want every member up here, every member nationwide, to become a political activist, to educate themselves on the issues, and then to influence the opinion molders in their communities.
And that's how you have the right positive things happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, we've been up here now the last several days, and tonight we're doing a presentation here in Saco on Agenda 21. And you think, well, they got rid of it back in the fall. Well, no, they haven't. Right now in Maine, there's what, 5 or 6 towns that formerly belong to the activist arm of Agenda 21 called the ICLEI, a clear violation of the U.S. Constitution in at least 2 areas. International Council on Local Environmental Initiative, that would be York, South Portland, Portland, Falmouth, Yarmouth, and
Belfast is the last
Belfast
town.
is the last
The
one.
last official member of ICLEI.
And we were in Sanford last night, and I picked up, what I do in my travels, I look for evidence. We visit the town halls and city halls. We leave off information to the opinion holders, the mayor's office, the town managers, and what have you, city councilors. The reprint you have there, the green reprint there from the New American, and the little booklet you just showed, or
Yep.
we have various DVDs on the subject, if not from our group, from other like-minded groups, Dr. Michael Kaufman's group, Michael Shaw's group, Tom DeWeese is another man who's been
American Policy Center.
Policy Center, yes, thank you. And and actually they did a presentation up here a number of years ago that's available on.
Yeah, I think that was 2009.
2004.
2004.
Anyway, I picked up the Weekly Observer, which comes out of, it's a free newspaper that comes out of this region, York County area.
Sanford.
And Sanford, what have you. And new efforts target forest preservation. Little article, oh, this sounds nice. We're going to have plenty of trees and forest down the road here. And it's a new entity of the Three Rivers Lands Trust.
Yeah.
When you see a land trust and forest preservation, be concerned, be very concerned. And you'd say, well, what's wrong with preserving forests? We should do that. In fact, we took a short visit to the Saco Museum, and they have a display of, from the 1800s, there's always been a concern. And they did a pretty good job of, I mean, there was obviously a lot of factories, which are a good thing, but some factories do have, do some pollution. And they talked about, of course, the factories here use what, mostly hydroelectric or hydropower.
Used to use, when we had factories, they used hydroelectric
That's
power.
green energy, isn't it?
Well, you would think so.
And that's actually considered not sustainable by the Agenda 21.
Exactly.
So they have a windmill down the street here that's not working right now, where you have in hydroelectric. Well, one's a little more efficient than the other, you see. But anyway, when I read the article, it talked about the different groups that are participating in this, including the Nature Conservancy. And they may have done a lot of good work over the years, but they are up to their eyeballs in Agenda 21. They will come on to the landowner and they will tell you, look, we'll give you, give us a conservation easement, this land will be preserved, and as you pass away, you can't pass that off, or there's land restrictions. Who was a gentleman we visited just yesterday who gave us some of his property to the...
Personal experience. We stopped and talked with a fellow yesterday who had a large piece of land behind his house where he had for years operated his ATVs and his snowmobiles. Well, that land had recently been signed over to one of these land trusts and locked away in a conservation easement. And they went in there and they improved the trails, upgraded everything, cleared it out. But then they put a restriction on it, no more snowmobiles and no more ATVs. So the people that have been using this land forever
can no longer use it
the way they were accustomed to, the way they wanted to.
And Maine has more forest today than they had 100 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
And that was because of the technological innovations, using fossil fuels instead of using trees for everything, wood and other products. Today, Maine is a pretty poor state.
Maine, I'm sad to say this, Maine ranks near the bottom, and I don't remember the exact number, but we're very close to the bottom on the scale of the states as far as being poor. It's a sad state of affairs. Maine used to be
manufacturing base.
Used to have a strong manufacturing base. This state is crisscrossed by rivers, and there was a power plant and a mill in every small town in Maine. There were jobs, good-paying jobs that were available. They're gone. They've gone overseas.
And it's because of the regulations at federal, trade policies like NAFTA and GATT, and now the Agenda 21 is probably putting that nail in the coffin.
NAFTA, CAFTA, and GATT, the trade drove the trade regulations, drove a lot of the industry in the whole United States, not just Maine.
Right. Drove
it overseas. The environmental regulations are coming along now and being enforced a lot more stringently and a lot more draconianly, if that's a word. And it's driving away the rest of the jobs.
And one of the ultimate goals, the Agenda 21 people, Maurice Strong, sort of the granddaddy of the Agenda 21, he said the American middle class is the biggest threat to the world because of the consumption patterns. So it looks like they've done a good job between the economic issues and the environmental issues and economic, environmental are hand in hand. And they've done a great job in destroying the middle class. I mean, I was here walking around downtown Biddeford. You see a lot of street people, people that seem like have not much hope. They're out of work. They look like they might be on drugs or drugged out, what have you. I'm sure 30 or 40 years ago, there would have been people walking back and forth to the mills, all the businesses and restaurants, all the industries that support the mill industry. I see the same thing. We go up to northern Maine, and we see the same thing. I go through a little town in, it's between Holton and Presque Isle, and there's a post office and a place that makes potato barrels. Everything else is out of business. It's almost a ghost town. And that's part of the plan as well. Yeah. So let me suggest, what do people do in Maine, or people watching this around the country? What should they do?
The first thing folks should do is investigate the John Birch Society and then join with us in our efforts. And once we have members, what we'd like our members to do is become political activists, become educated on the issues of the day, and then start contacting the opinion molders around their towns. And opinion molders can be anybody. It could be your barber. It could be the guy that works at your grocery store, because he talks to 100 people a day. Right. Yeah. Your postmaster, your selectmen or board of counselors or whatever they call it in the individual towns.
You have to realize these folks work, these selectmen and these town managers and these congressmen and the state reps, they work for us. We're their bosses, yet we have very little input on how they're supposed to do their jobs. And this is why they're getting away with it. And this is why these environmental activists are so successful, because they are everywhere.
We have very little input on how they're doing our jobs, because we've fallen down on the job.
That's right.
We've neglected to attend to our civic duties. And a big portion, a big message from the John Birch Society is the importance of our civic duties and the importance of knowing what our localities are doing and in keeping them under a tight rein. And it starts with that. It starts with knowing what's going on in your town, and then from there working your way up to the state and the national levels.
That's right. That's right. So one of the key items you have there on the table is this half-hour DVD overview of America.
Yeah, this is a DVD available on the website.
And if we had a cameraman, we would zoom in on it, but we don't. We're just doing this sort of.
It says overview of America. I think
take our word for
33 minutes.
And this is also on YouTube. And I go to shopjbs.org and buy a copy of that for $1 a piece plus postage.
And I think the important lesson to take from this little short DVD is that the right-left paradigm that we hear about in the news all the time, with the left had the communists on one side, the far left, and then the fascists on the other side, the far right, is not necessarily the way things actually are in truth. In truth, what you really have is complete totalitarianism, or absolute and total government on one side, and complete anarchy on the other side. And this DVD shows you that the ideal government and the type of government that this country was founded under, a representational constitutional republic, is right on the balancing point, right in the middle. So we're actually the middle ground. You know, we're actually holding the middle ground.
Constitutional moderate says.
Constitutional. We're the moderate.
Right.
People call us radicals and right-wing radicals, but that's not true.
Yeah.
We're the true moderates.
That's right. Right. Yeah. So, folks, thanks for watching. And again, shopjbs.org or jbs.org. Go to our website. There's an issue drop down. All kinds of things you can do. Contact Landon if you live in Maine. What's your phone number here, Landon?
Contact me at 207...
Even if you don't live in Maine, go ahead.
Even if you don't live in Maine. 207-844-0320, and I'll answer every call I get.
And say that again.
That's 207-844-0320.
And if you're living in another part of this country, we can put you in touch with local Patriot John Birch activists. So very good. Well, thank you, Landon.
Well, thank you, Hal.
And enjoy coming up here working with you. And God bless.